I'm going to put this like,
This is Karen with NewClevelandRadio.net, and it's time for, wow, I almost forgot the name of the show, Alicia. Talking Life with Alicia. And I don't know where my brain is. I'm between needing a therapist and needing to do some relaxation here. So I'm hoping that Elise, Marie, and you are going to be able to help me out as well as many of our listeners, because we seem to be going through a lot of upheaval right now. The pandemic, the election coming up, it becoming fall, knowing winter's coming, all those things. And I saw you posted something, Alicia, that time change is happening in the next couple weeks.
Yep, November 1st.
I don't like you anymore.
Stuck with me.
So, starting with you, Alicia, like, are you finding that people, when the weather changes and all these things are happening, are we more demanding of wanting to have time with a therapist?
Well, funny that you should say that. So my practice is almost doubled in the last 10 days. I'm not sure if it is because the energy with the pandemic, with the elections, with the changing of seasons in Michigan. We know seasonal affective disorder. Michigan does not get a lot of sunlight, although knock on wood, which I am right now. It's been gorgeous today. And so there are a lot of people though who embrace the fall and love the fall season, and that's where they get their energy from. So I think a lot of it has to do with the mindset. But there's definitely, it's a different energy this fall.
And at least you're out in San Francisco, where I know the weather changes, but not as drastically as it does here in the Midwest. What are you noticing?
Well, I guess what I'm hearing is there's two temperatures. There's this sort of psychic, spiritual, mental temperature that is in the world and in the country right now. And there's also the physical temperature here has dropped pretty. I mean, I wouldn't say it's cold, but it's gotten a lot cooler. There's been a shift, and everyone in the Bay Area, I think along the whole West Coast, is really welcoming this change because of the recent fires. And I'll just say, I'm a yoga teacher, and I practice and teach Ayurveda, which is about the seasons. So this is an important time in that shift. And I'm sure for both of those temperature reasons, that's why your practice is doubled, and people are showing up at yoga as well. Yeah, and in my programs.
So I think I mentioned this to you the last time we were on podcast together, that I attempted yoga. I had a friend who's a yoga instructor. She finally convinced me to come to the class. I came to the class not as prepared for what was going to happen. And what I mean by that is I'm very sensitive to fragrances, and she was burning all these oils, and I walked in and my head exploded on me. It was like, wow. But then, she kept saying, Karen's new, so, let's help her out. And I thought, well, that's awfully nice. But I kept looking around and I couldn't get in the positions that they were talking about. And so instead of relaxing, I became very hyper. I couldn't wait to get out of the room. So when you're doing yoga, does it have to be that precise?
In my opinion, no. And I would say yoga, I always bring it down to the meaning of yoga is union. The word yoga is a Sanskrit word that means to yoke or to unite. So in the West, I'm not speaking for everyone, but the West has interpreted yoga the way we want to interpret it. We're taking it through our filters, which is I would say more from, like, literally, if we're thinking about the elements, from the belly, from the fire, from the ego. And so it's become more of an exercise, or there's a lot of, there's a lot of things that I'm sure as a therapist that people come to you with perfectionism and things like that in this, especially in this country, the United States, we have a lot of that, is what I find. So I try to dial it back as a yoga teacher to the meaning is union. And I really literally have taught from 0 to 100. Well, maybe not. I haven't taught a 100-year-old, a centenarian yet, but I plan to. And so when you teach all ages and all sizes and all body types, you go to, like, what is aligning this person in this moment? If someone has a disability, it shouldn't be like, oh, I mean, that's ridiculous. It's a shape. Each pose to me is a shape, and it comes back to the breath. So I am also developing something called intergenerational yoga, where babies and great grandmothers can practice together. And it's just an idea, like a baby can sit, baby's hips are super open, but then as we age, our hips get a little more tight. But I could have I have literally taught these classes where there's a great grandmother sitting in a chair doing a pose, and the baby is just making everyone happy with their smile. So that to me is my definition of yoga. And each teacher will have their own spin on it. So I'm sorry you had a bad experience.
Well, I need to find someone like you here in the area. And I'm sure there are people. I'm such an open book that when something is bothering me or I have something on my mind, I feel like I have to share it. And I do a lot of that on Facebook, and some people tell me, hey, better stop that. But it does make me feel better. So, Alicia, I may not be sitting in your office sharing my thoughts, but if I'm sharing my thoughts openly, what is it that you would tell me that I should be prepared for? Because a lot of us are doing this right now.
Well, I believe in the mind, body, spirit. So I'm a humanistic therapist. So our head isn't a bobblehead. Well, mine is, it constantly goes, but it's connected. And I talk a lot about energy and the vibrations, and you have a lot of high energy. And I don't think I would throw you, if you were sitting in my office, I would not be like, hey, you know what? I think you should go practice yoga. I think that's going to center you. That's not where you're at right now. With my patients who are with trauma, I do a lot of trauma work. And that honestly, in the beginning stages, if they haven't already been practicing yoga, I actually don't recommend it, because so many things can come up. Because just like within meditation, we talked about breath. When you are that connected to your body and you are very aware of yourself, sitting in a pose is going to bring up a whole bunch of emotional things that will just come out of your body. A lot of people, that happens with massage or just touch. And so also I think too of how it's presented and how you go. Now, I do Pilates now because I have a ruptured disc. Like going to a yoga class for me, even a healthy backs class, it brings up all the issues of the fact of I'm not flexible well, I'm still flexible, but not how I used to be.
Sure.
And how I'm very aware I'm going to be 44 in a month. Like, there are things in a yoga class that I'm, quite frankly, it's not that I'm not ready to deal with, it's just, it all comes up. And so to hold whatever pose, child's pose, for example, that makes me in tears, because I feel where my disc has been ruptured. I feel the nerve pain at times. That's not, I'm very connected to my body and I'm very aware, but that's not relaxing. And I have those issues in Pilates as well. I think what for me, for Pilates, that's a way for me to really connect and kind of feel everything and nothing at the same time, because that's my escapism, because I take on everybody's energy.
Yes, you do.
I do. So it's a catch, and honestly, yoga is not for everybody.
Oh.
And I think it's a matter of how in touch you want to be with yourself. And it can be a very big spiritual journey. It's not just like, hey, well, there are some people who go to the gym and they have their spiritual awakening on a treadmill. I've been waiting for that moment for a very long time. It's never going to happen. And I got medical permission to never be on one again. But walking through nature, and here we go, bobblehead and hands. Walking in nature in silence, or taking 5 minutes to meditate so I can ground myself and kind of get in touch with myself, that is far more relaxing and freeing than going and sitting through an hour-long yoga class. So I think too, it's your mindset. And yoga is great for your body. Sometimes it's not always good for your mental capacity.
So how do you respond to that, Elise? I mean, this is something that you do, like you've said, with all ages. And so if let's say I came to your class and I was feeling intimidated because, people are getting in poses that I can't get into, or I don't think I can get into, or I find embarrassing, how can you help me through that?
Well, first I would say, yeah, I agree with Dr. Alicia. I don't think yoga is for everyone. In the broad sense, I mean, I'd say to be in connection in whatever capacity it is. So I think I also broaden it beyond like the physical. To me, yoga is also the mindset. And so if you came to the class, well, I'm clear in my classes that there's a separation. It's about, if you're doing the pose or whatever you're doing, it's to connect internally. And I tell you, if it's if it's making you feel uncomfortable physically, emotionally, spiritually, back off. I also teach restorative yoga. So I have this joke that I would like to, if I was, I don't know, a millionaire, billionaire or something, I would pay someone to come to every class and just lay down in a comfortable position and just show people you can do less. Because I think in our culture, we try to do everything we think we have to do like everybody else, and I think that's deeply ingrained. So that's why I make that joke, because if there was somebody lying there, you'd either think, oh, they're not doing it right, or, all your stuff would come up. Right. They would be the one like, they're doing it right. And I do literally sometimes, because I do teach restorative, I do sometimes have people that just lie there and rest. And I'm happy. I'm like, well, that's good, because they're a shining example that you can do whatever you need to do. So I would remind you, to take care of yourself, to know, I try to make light of things, because to me, try to make it fun, because it should be fun. It shouldn't be torture. And if it is, maybe it isn't for you. Go take Pilates, walk. I love walking. I mean, that's why I do have a lot of practices in my book that are all different, because not everybody wants to quote unquote do yoga or meditate for that reason too. Meditation can be even worse if you've got a lot going on. And I mean, there's times in the life state in our well, I'm using kind of technical terms, but the life in our life where maybe we have had a trauma or an injury. Certain medications make it really hard to sit still. So then you absolutely don't want to be doing anything still. Maybe you would just do like, just some in breaths, reaching your arms up and down. I mean, I teach older adults now too, and they're just doing very simple things, sitting in chairs mostly. Sometimes I'll get them out of the chairs, but they don't want to meditate either. They don't like it. They told me they don't like it, but they like what I do. They say, oh, it calms us down. But Elise knows that meditation is a waste of time. But I do meditate, but it was funny. That was their comments. They thought that I thought that. And I was like, no, I don't think that. I just teach you guys the way I think will help you.
So why do you think older people don't want to meditate? I mean,
well, I think some do. I think there's definitely some. I mean, it's hard to change your habits the older you get. So if you've been meditating, you know, since since the summer of love, then maybe it's easy for you. So you know, there's a lot of older adults. Like I just heard from one of my clients that they're building the local Zen center is building like a senior home. And she was kind of like, should I get in on it? Because it's not built yet. But yeah, but then there's some that haven't meditated. Like my parents don't meditate. They don't want to meditate. And I try, you kind of have to sneak it in stealth-like, kind of like with kids and vegetables or something. Because it's not always, you know, we need our nutrients, but it's not always like sitting really stiffly. And I think there's other ways, like Dr. Alicia was saying, walking. I think a lot of older adults, that's a beautiful way to quote unquote meditate, even with a cane or in, you know, if somebody was walking and there's someone with a wheelchair, you can go in nature or just enjoy, you know, that's something very meditative because you're just taking things in, and it's not, it's softer.
And I think too, when you bring up the summer of love, so my parents are they're of the hippie generation, as with my Aunt Kiki, and but my parents have always meditated, so that's not like that's not a bad word for us.
Yeah.
And my kids, who are 8 and 11, we meditate, but the way they meditate with me is different than they meditate with my sister.
Mm-hmm.
And which is probably different how they meditate with my parents, if they do. And they know that I have like 5 minutes to meditate, because when I would do my classes, and I took a meditation class, would be like, I'm bad at it, bad meditator, and it was like, there's not a right way to do it. And I think to get out of that mindset of, I mean, yes, in yoga there are positions that are the wrong way to do it and you're going to hurt yourself, but there's not a wrong way to do yoga, and there's not just one way, one path. And I believe, if I read correctly, Elise, that you do chakra work as well.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I've studied the chakras, and I think the chakras are just another way to interface with that like mental, emotional. And so, yeah, that to me is also another sort of stealth way. You can just think of the different properties. You know, do you need more stillness, or do you need, maybe some people need more movement if they're really depressed or something. I'm sure you'd have something to say about that, but maybe they need to get their, you know, they need to start walking. They need to start getting their literal blood flowing and their breath going and their chi moving. So, and for someone, yeah, really sad, meditating probably wouldn't be a good idea unless it was a certain kind, or like 2-minute meditation, 3-minute meditation.
Right.
Well, you know, my father used to tell us that he meditated in the morning. And when I was growing up, my father would get up and he would say his prayers every morning. So in the dining room, we'd find my dad there with his tallis on and all set up. And I would ask him afterwards, how were you meditating if you were praying? And he said, in his mind, he was thinking one thing, even though he was chanting by heart. He said, I'm not reading this. He said, but that chanting sound helps me get prepared for the rest of the day. And it didn't make sense to me until just recently, when I realized my walks are what get me set for the rest of the day. And when they get a little confusing, when I'm having a conversation with my husband, or I carry my phone with me for an emergency, but then somebody calls me and then I'm talking to them while I'm walking, I don't get the same thing out of it. So, you know, I think when I'm alone and walking, I'm hearing the birds. I'm thinking about almost what they're singing, what they're saying. listening to the, rattling of the leaves. I don't think I could sit in a chair and meditate because my brain would just go in every other direction. So what is chakra? Explain that to our listeners.
The chakras are, I have a well, this is the first book I ever wrote. I know it might be backwards, but there's 7, there's a picture in here. They're in the body. So the root one is at the base of the spine, and then you have your sacral center, which is, the root is like being grounded, being centered, connected to the earth. The sacral is emotion, sexuality. The third is like fire, energy. That's kind of where I think our country is stuck.
Yes.
Fighting, right? That's why we need therapy. We need to go into our heart. And actually, the Summer of Love, I think Jimi Hendrix said this, and then other people have said it, Anna Dea, Judith. We are moving from the love of power to the power of love, which to me is going from collectively, because I think we're all sort of, we move through the different chakras, but going from that fire ego to more to our heart. I think we are in that transition, but it's not pretty right now. No. Then there's the heart, heart, throat, third eye. This is like when you have a vision, or I always think it's like when you think of, you have a vision, or you think of an idea, you want to remodel your kitchen, something simple like that. You think of it in your mind first. So it's not always like a psychic with a, like looking in a crystal ball. We have to have something come from our vision and then put it into action. And then the crown is like where we're connected to all beings, like, everyone is one. We're not always all one, but we have an aspect of ourselves that's connected. And here, I'll hold this up. I don't know if that's
okay, kind of.
Yep.
So what she's showing, it's like a straight line,
right,
down the center of your body, and
yes.
You're starting from the top, or you can start from the top and going literally all the way down, and it follows. So like in the back of it would be like your spinal cord. Exactly. And so when things are stuck or misaligned, or your energy or your focus.
So a lot of therapists use biofeedback. And when I went through biofeedback, okay, that's how they taught it to me, okay, that I had to start at the top and work it down. And if I would say, well, it's like stuck in my throat, it'd be like, maybe that's as far as it's going to go today. And I would look at the therapist like, no, I want to get it through. But I realize that sometimes we are stuck. Or am I wrong?
I think that's the nature of the human condition. To be honest, I mean, we get stuck, we get fixated. I hate to say it, very cliched, but life happens. Yeah. And whether we have coping skills, we don't have coping skills. And that's why I always say, like, the mind body, if you're acting with people who have got PTSD, fight, flight, freeze. When I get so angry, you know what? I get so angry, I'm in fight mode. That, well, what happens to your body when you're in fight mode? Well, you're acting from your amygdala, which is your emotional part of your brain. So you don't need your stomach. You don't need certain physical attributes of our central nervous system. Well, if I continue to live in my anger, yeah, I'm going to have stomach aches. I'm going to have tense muscles. I'm going to have wherever I'm carrying my stress. And that energy will go there, or it's blocked.
Interesting.
So that's why I always say it is the mind-body connection. And, our brain is a tricky monkey, and it's fascinating, and we don't use nearly as much capacity that we could, should, or whatever. but you have to figure out what's being activated, what's not being activated. No, I now know very well where I carry my stress because I'm doing self-care and getting massages once a week. And it is literally, interesting enough, all in my neck. Mm-hmm. It used to be in my shoulders and now it is in my neck, which, okay, so mouth, neck, what do I do for a living? and realizing like all of my, what am I consuming my energy? And I believe this, the energy that you bring in, you also bring out. And so I try to stay positive. And that's what I teach my children of like, you cannot like somebody, but not wish ill on them. And if they do fall ill, you should not wish that is bad on them, because that's going to come back to you. That's a reflection of negative energy. Now, granted, not everything can be positive, and there's a little saying that I'm sure I've posted a lot of times in the last month of, I'm a little bit of, like, I think it's light, what is it? Love, light, and a go F yourself. Like, I'm a little bit of all of that mixture. I can't be like, oh, love and light and everything is fantastic. One, no one would come to me as a therapist because that's not reality. And two is it's my attitude towards life. So, but at the same time, I really, like, I do believe in karma and that has nothing to do with me, but I have control how I am in the world. And I have to teach my children that. So a lot of this stuff, and we can take that back to yoga. Like this week would not be a day for me to go to yoga. And I do, like I said, I do Pilates twice a week. It's different. It's moving. I go one day a week by myself, and then I'm with my mom or my dad, or sometimes the both of us. So we have our intergenerational yoga, Pilates class, which also brings up a whole bunch of other fun issues. But we clearly feed off of vibrations, and people's energy affects us. And it's the book The Secret has come out. There's a lot of things, and how you carry yourself or where you're stuck in. Could you use yoga as a way to unstick yourself? I don't think you could solely do yoga to unstick yourself. Because it is a mind, body, spirit connection. And I think that's really, yoga isn't for everybody. And people who don't like yoga or don't get anything out of yoga, I kind of look at them and kind of go, well, what are they really getting out of in their life? And so like you said before we started, you went on a walk with your husband today, and that was not fulfilling. You were having a need that was fulfilling. Right. Yeah, you were not in the present moment. You were in your head. And so, but you went and worked out, and you felt immensely better.
Right.
Because you know what? You weren't in your head.
You're right. I definitely wasn't.
I was also thinking when you were talking about the amygdala, I was like, oh yeah, that's what happened to Karen. She got stuck, whatever. We don't know the conversation. She didn't tell us what it was, but it sounds like it triggered her amygdala, because when you're stuck in that amygdala, and I just took psychology for aging psychology, but we learned about the amygdala because that's so important, that if you keep feeding the amygdala, it's gonna get bigger. Like you're gonna grow those neurons rather than the other ones, which kind of comes back to, should you do yoga or not? It's gonna help you get out of the amygdala, but it might not help everything. You can't be doing yoga. Well, you can in a certain way if you're, somebody who's so enlightened, you're doing yoga 24/7. But we need a lot of tools in our toolbox, especially I think in the modern era. And I mean, I have to say, so many of my students are like, they're always like, well, I go to therapy, I go to yoga, I go to, that's right, that's what we all do. I do massage, or for me, I love acupuncture. We have our little tool. I know some people, it's not that. I know people don't like needles. There's actually something that I've done in person. We can't do this anymore, but I have a sound healer that I do workshops with. And there's a thing called Tonics where you you make, you hit a tuning fork. She plays a tuning fork. She hits it on a belt, and then she puts it on your acupuncture points. So
I could
yeah,
totally do that.
Yeah, people love it. If they don't like needles, it's perfect for them. So it is a thing. So yeah.
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up, because there's so many things that we can do to get ourselves in that zone that we need to be in. And like I said, when I was walking this morning, I didn't realize that I was like really revving myself up until he left, and I went to the grocery store, and I'm walking through the grocery store and nothing looked good. I didn't like anything. I mean, I saved myself a lot of money today, but I have no food in the house. But when I came home, that's when I got energized and realized, wait a second, I'm home by myself. I didn't have any shows directly this afternoon that I had to prepare for. And so I just started doing some of my workout, and I just felt like, oh, wow, I feel really good. And I connected that with the fact that I was doing some self-care, but listening to the two of you, we need a combination of self-care. It's not just therapy. It's not just yoga. It's not just working out. It's a combination of tools.
Well, absolutely. I mean, we all know, if you don't know by now, yes, I have a sports car. I haven't, she is sadly enough going to be, stored soon, because I will refuse to put her out in the snow or any rust on her whatsoever. She will not be exposed to salt. She's on a low sodium diet, but I haven't driven her in a couple weeks. And my daughter was like, it is gorgeous out, Mom. Like, let's take, her name is Vixen. She's very pretty. Let's take Vixen out just to go to my parents' house. And I'm sitting here like, okay, it's not going to rain. My cars are pampered. It's not going to rain. It's perfect condition. It's gorgeous out. Why not? And I did. Well, because I have my children in the car, and I tend to have a tendency that speed limits are advisories. And then I have my co-pilot daughter who's like, go fast, Mommy. So that didn't really help, but there is a part to get to my parents that's kind of curvy, and the leaves are falling, and I have to be present. I can't be in my own head, especially screwing around at fast speeds. That's not, responsible, especially with your children in the car. Definitely not responsible. But there was this moment of, I'm slowing down because I let the cars in front of me go. And for 5 seconds, I can't tell you how fast I was going, because I don't know, because I wasn't paying attention to that, because I'm looking at the road, and I'm literally enjoying the ride. And in that 5 seconds, because we caught up to the cars that were going slow, but I took that deep breath. We talk about returning to breath. I took that deep breath, and for a second or 2 seconds, I was out of my head. I was present in the moment, and I was clear, and I felt a whole lot better of those couple days. And so it is about self-care, but I think too, it's about finding stuff that you enjoy. Because honestly, we shouldn't, with the exception of a few things, some of us going to work, I happen to love what I do, so it's every day is an adventure. But really embracing life and really kind of doing what's right for my family, for me. And yeah, we do yoga poses and we meditate, and that's great for my family. And quite frankly, a lot of the times until I go out into the real world, I forget that there's a pandemic going on, because we are living our life and embracing change. And at the same time, yoga worked for yesterday. It might not work today. It could work tomorrow. I'm not putting a must-have. We talk about my patients. the trauma work. I have, and what I was telling before, I have patients that have been doing yoga. If there's a particular week we're working on a very important thing or they're not in the mindset, I'm not one to say, you know what, go try yoga. But I will say to them, today is not your day. Go work out instead. Go do something else. Today is not the day to be connected. I want you to disengage, actually, because with PTSD, it is a mind-body disorder. And that's not going to help you manage everything that's being manifested. And there are a lot of people who do, well, we do trauma yoga. And there are people that do that have, at least in here in the Midwest, they'll do trauma yoga. And I'm sure that there is out west. I don't know how that works. I will be the first person. Sometimes it works for people and sometimes it doesn't. I would think it would take it would have to be a very special class, and there would be a lot of things, a lot of teachings, and a lot of space and energy. But yeah, with people with depression, I want them to go and move. Somebody who doesn't like their body, or even people who have eating disorders, I might right now in the beginning of therapy not recommend that. They want to go do something. Yoga wouldn't be a way to clear your head. I might suggest something else if they have to have that exercise component. I think that people have the wrong notion about what yoga is and what it does, because the way it's portrayed on TV a lot of the times, and the practice of yoga, it is very encompassing. And I've had patients who do yoga in my office while we're doing therapy, because but that's what's comfortable for them. And me being me, I'm like, well, okay, I've gone on walks with patients, said, you can't be here right now because their anxiety level is just, I don't know, taking up the whole entire building, just not my office. We're going for a walk, and we'll literally walk and not say anything. And just allowing that space. But you can do so many things. So, because
I'm a novice at this. And so, Elise, my question to you is, I always thought that the concept of yoga was to, get yourself centered and to breathe and relax. And so I would think that if you were in trauma, this would be a great thing.
Yeah, well, I'd love to hear what Dr. Alicia said. Am I saying your name right? Elise or Alicia?
Alicia, but you can just call me Alicia.
Okay. I like that it says Dr. Alicia on the screen. Alicia. Okay, well, this is what I think, because we brought up a lot of really interesting topics to me. And I think it comes back to, and I'm not like 100% on what happens in unraveling PTSD, but we talked about the amygdala, and the amygdala gets triggered, and then that's where it's really hard to disengage. And what I was thinking when you were talking about your walk today, and then you were in the grocery store, well, the word I remember when I studied psychology was the amygdala hijacks you. So you're hijacked, you're literally hijacked. So it sounds like you're talking a lot about hijack situations where, I mean, we all get in them, right? We all just have these flip out moments. And if you're going through PTSD, they happen, sure, a lot. Yeah. So it's like that part takes over. And then meditate. It's almost like you're going, sports car metaphor, you're going 100 miles an hour. And then what are you going to do? You're like, slam on the brakes. No, you have to like ease back into that more subtle practice, because yoga is very subtle. I mean, I could see where somebody who was very, new, maybe a yogi master, or somebody who practices a lot of yoga could just do some quick movements that might help them process. That's where I could see, or working with a yoga therapist that might say, okay, we're not doing yoga, we're going on a walk or something. Because there's not a therapist, a counseling therapist, but there is something called yoga therapy where you would work one-on-one with somebody. So that's what I think about it, but I'd be curious, because that's what I'm hearing. It's just, sometimes you really need to get out of
your body.
We're processing so deep. And I mean, that happens to us all. And I'm sure with PTSD, it's much stronger. So I'd love to hear what you have to say about that.
Oh, I absolutely. I mean, you're talking about being triggered left, right, you don't know. And then we're going to ask you to sit in a pose, listen to my voice, get out of your head. You are being literally directed in 5, 6 different ways. Hold it. There's no outside noise. And your brain is literally offline except for this little thing. And the amygdala literally is like this big. Wow. And it is controlling everything. And so to hear, how can you get into a mind space and be connected when you're like literally like, you're going to die or I'm going to die. And that's literally what your body's going through. And because it doesn't have any, it has emotional memory, but no, like, I don't want to say physical memory because that's not it, but it controls all the other memories. It controls how you're breathing. So, you know, this whole thing of like, okay, now take a deep breath and hold it. When your mind is going like, I'm going to die or you're going to die or we're just going to be deer in headlights and freeze. Mm-hmm. It's not conducive. Yeah. And the other thing, it's like when you are on a hamster wheel all the time, to pump your brakes, like, I mean, the sports car is a great thing. It is literally like you are going down this path at a huge speed. Even if you did just slam on the brakes, we leave, as my daughter calls them, tire mark, like art. Because you're not going to, even with Brembo brakes, you're not going to stop on a dime and come to a complete stop. You are going to slide. Well, yoga is it's a progression, and it's certain movements, and it's done in sequences. So imagine that you're going, whoop, and then you're like, and now we're gonna do this. It's absolutely 2 ends of a spectrum. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, and I mean, you could say that for not even just PTSD, people who are anxious. Yeah. You know, that's like telling someone like, stop being anxious. And they're like, just stop. Yeah. It always works well.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, well, those were the words of my mother growing up, you know.
Oh, just stop.
Yeah, just stop. You don't have to be upset, or, you know, you don't have to feel that way. And it'd be like, maybe I don't have to, but I do. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things that I learned becoming a mother, was not to put those words into my kids' heads. You know, oh, you're feeling this? Okay. You know, we can try to figure out why you're feeling it and maybe make it better, but I can't tell you not to feel that way.
Right. And I can't always make it better.
Exactly.
I mean, I've had temper tantrums on the floor with my children. I'm not going to lie. And you know what? And I used to get in trouble for telling my mother that I hated her when I was younger. And I understand the sword in the heart when my adorable daughter said, and I hate you. And I was like, fantastic, dagger. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to get really upset. And I was like, you know what? I'd hate me too. I'm telling you, you can't do this. You're like 5. And you're pissed. Okay, guess what? I'd be pissed too. And I literally walked away. And then she, you know, flipped out and then came back, Mommy, I love you. I'm like, I know, I love you too. I don't really hate you. No, of course not. But again, that taking that breath in that moment, she still had to get it out of her system. I mean, that freaking out toddler, I'm thinking about that now. I'm like looking at my floor going like, I remember it. And oh, honey, let's switch directions. Let's try yoga right now. Wouldn't have gone well.
No.
Or even giving a kid a piece of candy in the grocery store when they're totally out of control. You know, you can't do that. And
well, you can. It's not going to end well.
That's true. So what I've learned, and I'm hoping your listeners have learned, is that it's a combination of things to make ourselves feel good. And we have to find that combination in ourselves. And that's part of doing yoga, is finding that center, correct?
I think so. I think it's also I'm thinking of the older adults that I teach. I'll just talk about them for a moment because this is, I think, the best way to describe it, because yoga could mean so many different things, but I learn from my students. And right now I'm teaching online virtually to older adults across the country through Zoom. And for them, like, some of them have fallen. So falling is a big concern as you grow older. So I help them, like, literally do things. Sometimes it's just swaying or moving their weight, because you need to, like, it's good for your bones, it's good for everything, or do some standing poses, and some of it is in a chair. So they're doing physical things that will help them with balance. And you were saying balance. And then they also need confidence, because if you're afraid of falling, and I'm sure this goes back to PTSD too, but if you're afraid of falling, you're more cautious, and then you get more tense. It can cause you to, so like the more they can relax and feel like, oh, I can get out of the chair easily, and they start to feel strong. So I think that just speaks to how yoga and Ayurveda, nothing is really, we've been sort of separating things. That's our human condition or human mind or whatever it is. But I think it all goes together. And if I were going to sum up today, it's knowing what to do next. And maybe it's talking to your therapist, maybe some days yoga, some days taking a walk. But the more we grow and learn through therapy, we talk to our therapist and we start to realize our patterns, and then we know ourselves better. I think it's about that self-knowledge. So that to me is coming back into center, knowing how to choose the right self-care for you in this moment.
Absolutely. Well, you have a couple books out there, correct?
Yeah, I do. I can show you. Super Ager is the last one.
Super Ager, I love that. Yes.
Super Ager is the latest one, and that it does have. I have yoga. I think of it loosely as yoga lifestyle, but there's lots of things like walking and different practices, because all around the world people have had similar. I mean, they've had the same problem. We've had the same problems and come up with various modalities. There's thousands, millions of modalities. So I just picked some simple ones that anyone could do.
Well, I think that's helpful. Now, if people want to get on Zoom and do the classes with you, is there a way they can do that?
Yes, you can find me through Instagram, Elise Marie Collins Yoga, and EliseMarieCollins.com. I also have, you can get tips. I have a free, you go to my website and just type in EliseMarieCollins.com/tips. You can get 10 tips to Super Age, and they can help you. There are a lot of the things we talked about, like breathing. I don't know if I have walking, but move your body, nourish, some of the things we didn't talk about, but just simple tips to age well and, frankly, live well.
Put up all your books. You have to put up all your books.
That's Super Ager. And then I wrote Chakra Tonics. That was the first book I wrote when my son wasn't a toddler, but he was in kindergarten. So I wrote that a long time ago. And then this is A to Z Guide to Healing Foods.
That is wonderful. So it's really, both of you, when you're there helping a patient or a client, you're talking about more than just the movement. You're talking about their mind. Where are they, and where they come from, and where do they want to go? And we have to feed that body correctly. And that's one of the things that you talk about, Elise, is that, we could sit and eat bonbons all day long, but that's not going to help us possibly doing some of the movements that we need to do, or feeling better about ourselves. So this has been enlightening to me, especially because we're all going through this really rough time right now. And we think when you go on Facebook that everybody has it better than us. The reality of it is we're all in the same streetcar right now, and we all want to jump off. So, Elise, I'm looking forward to January when we do more with your books, and hopefully some of your clients. And then we'll have to have Alicia come back on and talk about, you know, how all of a sudden she's moved to doing yoga now.
Have we met?
Yeah, well, hey, you know.
Oh, we can talk about it.
Well, and that's the fun thing is that, you know, what's good for you may not be good for me. And that's what I got out of this today. We have to find what works for us. So thank you, ladies, again. And Alicia, make sure you say hi to all the family. I thought I was going to surprise you all and be up there next week.
Yes.
It fell through. So maybe another week.
Yes. Well, wishing everybody peace, love, health, happiness, and a little bit of wealth. And I can't wait for our next podcast. And Elise, I'm excited for your series to start in the new year. So that's very exciting.
Thank you. Yeah.
Everybody take care and be safe out there in San Francisco.
Yeah. Thank you. Great to meet you.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye now.
Bye. Bye.